Here, let me hit record. Okay, sweet. So, Jason, if you want to take it away.
Oh my gosh, was I supposed to do this? Did I mess up? I think I messed up.
It's okay. It's just today
Let's
will
do.
be this. So demos, and then the learning module on
Okay.
accessibility, and then what's the last thing? Issues for next week.
Okay.
And y'all get first dibs. So
Now look at that. Okay, so we're going to do demos. Is this two different teams or is this one team?
Two different teams.
there you go. That works out.
Perfect.
I know.
So who
got
wants to
lucky.
demo? Who wants to demo first?
I can go ahead since I'm already unmuted.
Okay.
Go ahead and share my screen. Okay. So this week, Jeff and I, our issue was to implement some validation into the add item view so that the user would not be able to enter either nothing or enter an item that's already on the list. So, and there was a little bit of a like curveball, I would say, but not really. But it also had to be so that even if there was extra spaces or punctuation, if the string itself matched the items that were already on the list, it would not validate. So for example, if I have, and I want to say thank you to Nisha because she caught that before we could enter like a bunch of spaces and then put add item and it would go ahead and enter an empty item, but she shared some ideas for validation and we trimmed it so that it would not count the blank spaces. So now if there's only spaces, it says, please specify the name of the item instead of and adding an empty item to the list. And then, for example, if we look at our list here, we have paper as the first item that's already there. So if we enter paper, it's not going to work. It says this item already exists in your shopping list, but if we also enter, and paper right now is not case sensitive. So if we were to do paper with a space here and then a dot somewhere and then a comma and exclamation points, if we do add item, it also says this item already exists in your shopping list. So that's that. And if we were to add something that's completely different, even though this list is like very, very long, I feel like we've all been testing on it. Let's see, I think we don't have towels. So towels and soon add item. And it still adds the item if it doesn't already exist on the list. So that's it. If there's any question I can share. The only thing that I can share in terms of the code is Jenna and I were working together on like practicing Code Wars kind of like tech interviews, and we found like we were talking about replace to be able to manipulate strings, and she shared with me the replace method that I had never heard of, and then this week kind of worked out to be also a replace method. So Jeff and I had already done a for loop, I think, to kind of cycle through the entire word and then only pull out just the letters and just leave everything out. But Jenna suggested the replace with this regex. I'm still trying to study regex to fully understand how they work. But it only keeps the letters either capitalized or lowercase. And then we're able to just do the transform input to lowercase just to make sure. And then we compare the two and then everything kind of works. So we saved a few lines of code, like 4 or 5 lines of code. So that was pretty cool.
Cool.
That's everything.
Nice.
Awesome. Nisha?
Okay.
Are you guys able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this week, Jenna and I, our issue, we were to add a new feature that allows the application to be able to calculate the number of days that will take for the user to need to buy the item again. So each time the user purchases an item, the item's date next purchase property gets calculated and updated. This was by far the hardest ticket for me, because I know, sorry, this is a demo. I should be like professional, but I just wanted to share. It traumatized me this week. So it's like hard for me to go into the code base and explain it to you guys because, oh my gosh. When I started learning JavaScript like a year ago, I kind of like briefly went through dates. So working with dates again, and the buyer base was just a mess. But okay, so we have two items here, apples and juice. I just wanted to show date next purchase getting updated. I'm just going to change the date last purchase so it'll get unchecked. So there's juice. When I check it off, the date next purchase is now February 14th. And as well, when we add a new item, I'll say paper. Okay. So paper in the database, because I chose 7 days, it's 7 days later, February 18th. Then when we check it off as purchased, it gets updated to the 12th. Like I said, yeah, this week traumatized me. Okay, I think I lost you guys, but I would love for Nina and Megan to please share some insight. Because yeah, I just I don't know, like I was just going off your guys' suggestions, like oops, sorry. Yeah, I was just going off your guys' suggestions. I really was just at a loss. Me and Jenna were just kind of struggling with this one issue.
Yeah, I mean, you did great. Like you did it. So definitely pat yourself on the back for that. Was there something in particular that you were struggling with? It sounded like the like date object maybe was tough, and then that plus Firebase.
Yeah, I specifically was like I feel like purchase previous estimate, like it wasn't as descriptive what was required. So it was that part that confused me, and then you guys were suggesting what it should be, how it should be calculated. So yeah, I think really it was that was throwing me off, because all it said was it's a previous estimate interval. So we didn't really know what to interpret that as.
Was that in the issue?
Yeah.
Okay. That's definitely good feedback. I'm gonna write that down, because we have at the end of every cohort, we have like a little post-mortem to be like, what stuff was hard, what stuff was confusing. So you said previous estimate description wasn't clear. And sorry, which issue were you, 9 or 10?
I think it was 10.
Okay.
Yeah, we were 10.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way that I interpreted it was just supposed to be like from the last purchased date, like how long in between now and then. But yeah, because that's one of the predefined methods, right? The like calculating estimate.
Yeah.
You didn't write that. That's in the utilities. Yeah. So
I can share a little bit of what I understood, or
yeah, go
like
ahead.
how I understood. So like when we were working with like Jenna, we kind of briefly talked about it. So that's kind of how I got involved a little bit. But the when I first saw the code, I didn't quite understand like what was going on. Like even from the issue, I kind of pieced things together, and it started to make a little bit more sense. And then Megan came in and she was like, wait, this could be like even more extrapolated. So we had to have like two different like three different sets of eyes. Like your guys is first to kind of start putting things together. And then I looked at it, and then Megan looked at it and was like, oh, okay, like this makes a lot of sense now. But I think so the estimates, from what I understand from the function, is basically taking what was the estimate before, right? The previous estimate, and then it looks like at the it looks at the last time the purchase was made and then how many times you purchased it. So it basically kind of creates like a factor, be able to say, well, according to that frequency, I'm able to like get that. So when you're trying to get the previous estimate, like Megan was saying, that previous estimate is the difference between the date last purchased and the date next purchased, as it is now, right? Like before you purchase it again, right? And when I was suggesting to add it to the database, I didn't put those two into together. It hadn't like clicked at that point. But then when you're updating the database after that, then you're updating the date last purchase and you're also updating the next purchase. So then at that next calculation, you can take those two values and look at what was the value that we used before. Does that make a little bit more sense? Okay, cool. Yeah, it threw me off for a loop too. It took me a while and to see what was going on. So yeah, awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I don't have a handle on this thing yet. I'm still reading it, but living in this world where it's like it's not really clear what's going on, that's professional work. It's like people give you something like, oh, just make it work. You're like, then you have to think about it and like write a lot of probing questions, get really precise and present in a way that's not like, because you're thinking, why aren't you doing your job? You should write your requirement better. You just have to be like, what more like, well, what exactly do you mean by this? And then give examples and like really make it super crystal clear. Because sometimes, you make something crystal clear, like, oh, no, that's not the way I wanted to work at all. And they'll go back and like, oh, we're gonna take this off the board because I'm not sure if we can even do the thing that I want to do. Like, okay, good. Because that requirement made no sense, right? So like filtering through and figuring out requirements is key.
Yeah.
Because
No, go ahead.
Oh, because a general rule, people are lazy, and they, as programmers, you can't be lazy, right? Because you have to make the thing work. So for us, we're super detailed, like it has to work exactly right, or everything explodes and goes into fire. But people who aren't in tech are like, just make it, work. So there's a huge chasm that you have to like bridge often.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think that was one of the like biggest sort of game changers for me when I went from like entry level dev to like senior dev is like at the beginning, I used to think like, oh man, these senior devs, they just know everything when you pick up a ticket, but really like they don't know what's going on when they first start a ticket either. It's just like through the process of asking questions to like clarify what the requirements are and then like digging into the code and trying stuff out and just seeing, like eventually they know what's going on, but like nobody knows what's going on when we first pick up something.
Yeah. But as a programmer, you don't have the luxury of like hand waving something away.
Yeah.
You have to feel like everything works exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Cool. So what do I talk about next? Oh, sorry.
So next I think is me. So we've got a learning module this week.
Right.
Let me share my screen.
Demos.
Okay. This one. Okay, so what we're going to do this week is talk about accessibility. Have either of you heard of this term before or done any accessibility work? Okay, sweet. So we're going to talk about like what accessibility is, why we should care about it, and then how you can do some accessibility testing in your own projects. So just as like a heads up, sometimes you'll see the term accessibility written out like this, like A11Y, like these are ones and not L's, which is what I originally thought. And that's called a numeranim. like an acronym, but with numbers, because there's 11 letters in between the A and the Y of accessibility. So just sometimes they'll have like other things like that, like internationalization also has a thing where it's written like I-18N. So sometimes if you see that, it's just a long word that they're trying to make shorter. So fundamentally, web accessibility, I'm just going to read this part. Web accessibility is the inclusive practice of ensuring there are no barriers that prevent interaction with or access to websites by people with physical disabilities, situational disabilities, and socioeconomic restrictions on bandwidth and speed. And so when you get down to it, accessibility is just about making sure that everybody has equal access to the information and the like functions of a website, so that you're not excluding anybody. And so there's a couple different groups linked here. The W3C has a working group called the Web Accessibility Initiative, who focuses on building standards for how to build accessible websites. Like, what are the sort of things that you need to have for your site to be considered accessible? And then what are some like tips on like improvements that you can make? So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, is the sort of industry standard for what criteria your site has to pass to be considered accessible. And there's like different tiers. Well, I can't find it in here, but there's basically 3 different tiers, where there's like level A is the like bare minimum of accessibility. And then there's like AA, which is sort of the best practice to aim for. That's like more accessible. And then AAA is like the most accessible, like above and beyond. And so these standards have different, they like tackle different like things that you have to do to meet those levels. So, and then also in the US, we've got the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so there's a law that says that government agencies have to build websites that are usable by people with disabilities. And so even though the law is just about government sites, I think like businesses are also starting to adopt these practices too, basically to say that people with disabilities also have a right to access platforms online. So in terms of how people with disabilities access the web, there's a lot of different kinds of assistive technologies, which based on the kind of disability, you might use one or more of these. So there are screen readers, which I'll do a demo of in a little bit, which basically you can use your keyboard to navigate a website, and then your screen reader will read it out loud to you. Screen magnifiers, so if you have poor eyesight and you need to zoom in, they have tools that can do that. Speech input, if you want to like, kind of like Siri, if you need to like dictate what to do to navigate a web, if you can't use a keyboard or a mouse. And then assistive keyboards, I don't actually know what an assistive keyboard is. Maybe like a switch. They have different kinds of keyboards based on different sorts of motor impairments that you might have. And then braille displays, which have like, they can like read the text on a website, and then it'll like make the little bumps show up so that you can read it through braille. And then for screen readers, there's 3 main ones. So on a Windows machine, there's NVDA, which is the open source one. I think it's free to use. And then JAWS, which is popular but expensive. And then on Mac, all of your devices come built in with VoiceOver, or come with VoiceOver built in. So that's the screen reader that I'll do a demo of in a little bit. So any questions on what accessibility is before we keep chugging along? All right, sweet. So why should we care about this to begin with? At the core, like this first point is the one that I always end up coming back to. that just building accessible websites is just the right thing to do. The same way that we wouldn't want to build a site that excludes like all women or all people from a certain country. Like you also don't want to exclude everybody with a disability from being able to use your website. There's the legal obligations that we talked about before of the Section 508 stuff, where if you don't have an accessible website, then you might get sued by users. There have been a couple of big lawsuits relatively recently, like Domino's got in big trouble for having an inaccessible website and then basically like trying to not fix it. I think Target also got in trouble for having their website not be accessible. So that's kind of more the stick than the carrot approach. But depending on the company, that might be necessary. And then this is just an interesting statistic that there are more people who navigate the web with assistive technologies than you might think. So in just the US alone, more people access the web with an assistive technology than people that live in all of Canada. So that's a lot of people. Like you wouldn't want all of Canada to not be able to use your site. So
Absolutely not. Come on.
yeah, I know. Especially in this group, we got a bunch of Canadians. And then this last piece is about making, basically by making your website more accessible for people with disabilities, you will also make it a better experience for everyone. So some people might use a keyboard to navigate their site, not because they have a disability, but just because they are your power users or whatever, and they want to be really speedy. And so by building a website that has good keyboard navigation support, then you are making their lives easier as well. And then this is a diagram that talks a little bit more about the sort of difference between permanent and temporary and situational disabilities. So we talked a little bit about this earlier, but basically across all of these different facets of disability, you can have a permanent version of that, where you're always affected by it, or you could have a temporary version of that disability. So for touch, the like permanent equivalent of that could be, for like one example, could be if you only have one arm, right? You are always going to have to navigate the web with only one arm. But a temporary version of that same disability could be if your arm is in a cast. And so you can't use one hand for a little while, but eventually you'll be able to use it again. And then situational is like even more like, I don't know what the word is, but even more situational than that, like shorter time span, where if you're a new parent and you gotta like carry a baby around, you only have one hand to use your phone to do whatever. And so by thinking about the people in this permanent category, you are also going to build a site that helps the people in these temporary and situational categories as well. Okay, so now we get a little bit more into the nitty-gritty. So we're going to talk about some general best practices for how to build an accessible website. So the first big one is to just use semantic HTML elements. Have you heard that term before, semantic HTML? Okay, sweet. So basically, instead of using like just a div and trying to recreate everything, like a button out of a div is a common thing that people try to do. But if you just used the button HTML element instead, that already comes baked in with a bunch of accessible features so that like you can focus on it. If you use your keyboard, you're like pressing tab. If you use a button element, it'll automatically receive focus and it automatically will click the button if you click enter or something like that. And so there are a lot of examples of built-in HTML elements that give you functionality that will make your site more accessible. And then you can just use CSS or something like that to style those elements instead of trying to just roll your own from scratch. And then the next one is about images. So you always want to have an alt attribute on your image. The alt text is to describe to somebody who's using a screen reader, like what is in this image. So usually any text that is in the actual image, you'd want to include that. And just like a description, kind of think if you were going to explain the picture to a friend or something, like what would you say to talk about the important pieces of that image? And then even if your image is just like decorative, like sometimes they'll have, you know, those like hero images at the top of a blog post or whatever, and it's just like a picture of a leaf. It like doesn't actually have anything to do with the content. It's just purely decorative. In that case, if it's information that's not going to help anybody understand the content of your site, you can just put an empty alt attribute. So just empty quotes. And then that will tell a screen reader like, hey, this is just decorative, so just skip it. You don't have to say anything about it. So basically, long story short, just always have an alt tag, either empty quotes or an actual description. And then this next one is about ARIA, which stands for something, Accessible Rich Internet Applications. So these are specific attributes that you can add on top of your HTML elements if you need to give it some like extra information for a screen reader or something like that. So like this one is saying, okay, we've got a div here that says, it's like a progress bar div. So if we need some way for a screen reader to know what the min and max value of that progress bar is, then you can add this in here. One caveat with this, though, is that there's this quote over here: the best ARIA is no ARIA at all. Like sometimes people will try to use ARIA as a way to like retroactively fix a bad like HTML, bad underlying HTML, which if you don't know what you're doing could actually make your experience worse for screen reader users than if you just didn't have ARIA in the first place. So this is a like use with caution. And then these next ones we'll do, we'll cover these when we do the demo. But basically making sure that any interactive elements on your page, like buttons or links, are accessible via your keyboard. And then making sure that as you tab through the page, you like jump around in an order that makes sense. And then the last two are about color, which is a big thing. So this one links to a color contrast checker where you can put in a foreground color. Let's see, what is this? This is black text on white. But if I wanted to change this and make this like this one or something. So here you can see this passes the AA WCAG success criteria for small fonts, minimum contrast for fonts below 18. Oh, okay. So this is saying this passes the AA standard, but does not pass the AAA standard for what that contrast ratio needs to be. And then they have different ratios for smaller fonts versus bigger fonts. So here for things above 18 points for your font size, it does pass AAA. So this is a good way to test out, you know, if you're making your own color palette or something, like maybe don't pick something like this where it's going to be hard to read. And then the last one is about if you are using color to signify something in your application, there should be another way to also get that same information, just in case you are colorblind and can't tell the difference between those two colors. So on our application, we're gonna, I think this coming week, we're gonna have a story that's focused on like making it visible to the users what the different, like how soon you need to purchase an item. And so a common way to do that is to just use colors like red, green, yellow. But if you're red, green colorblind, then that's not going to help you. So you want to have an additional way like a label or an icon or something like that so that you can distinguish. Okay, and then this next one is about like, now that you know what those things to check for are, these are some tools that can help you run some accessibility tests on your own sites. So it kind of goes from least involved to most involved. This first one is called Axe, which is an extension that you can add to your browser. We'll do a demo of this in a second, but it'll basically just like scan your page real quick and then tell you what accessibility issues that it finds, which is a good place to start, but it's not going to be able to find everything. So like some things like tab order, right? Like it may not know, oh, you're like jumping around the page. Like there are some things that a human will probably need to test to be able to make sure that it's actually accessible. So then the next step up is doing a guided audit. There's this site called Accessibility Insights, which actually also I think has a browser extension that you can use. And they've got a checklist. I don't know where their checklist is, but there's also this site called the A11Y project, the accessibility project, that has a whole checklist of like tests that you can do to like walk through your site and make sure that everything is accessible. So this requires a person to go through the actual checklist. And then the sort of like gold tier best version of accessibility testing that you could use is with actual disabled users, because they're going to navigate the page, differently than me. Like I know how to use a screen reader, but it's not my primary way of navigating the web. So I'm not going to know all of the things or, know all of the patterns that people might see across different websites. So by using a company like Fable Tech Labs, they have a whole team of disabled users that they hire to test out different websites and then give feedback to say, hey, this is where I got stuck. Like maybe you want to try something like this instead. So that was a lot of information. What questions do y'all have before I jump into the demo?
That's good.
All right, sweet. Let's do it. So let's go back to this list up here. Okay, so I'm going to go to our site. Let me make this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to just do what I would normally do if I was going to test the accessibility of a site. So the first thing here is looking at like color contrast. It doesn't look like anything here is like not passing, but if we wanted to check that, so here, if I clicked on, well, actually, this is a little bit different because we're using variables. Okay, so here, this color is color light gray, which is a CSS variable. So I'm going to come down here to our CSS variables. Color, wait, was it color light gray or color gray light? Color gray light, okay. So here, if I click on, so I'm in Firefox, and if I click on, actually, can I make this bigger? Yeah, so if I click on the little circle here, it'll show me what this color is. This is a little tough because at this point, it doesn't know what the background is. But if up here, if I were going to do something instead like blue, then if I clicked on this, oh wait, sorry, I want to be messing with the text. That's why. If this is black. So if the color is black on blue, actually, this usually shows, I don't know why it's not doing it. This used to show
Do you have to
a
the
little
accessibility
thing.
tab? Doesn't matter.
No, it used to just be in there. wonder if it's because I'm zoomed in here. That would be funny. Okay, well, that's not ideal. There used to be a little thing under here where like, as you slide this around, it would tell you whether or not it was passing the accessibility, like AA, AAA success criteria.
Is
I
is
don't
that
know
maybe
where
on
it's
the
gone.
is that maybe on the Chrome console?
I don't know. I mean, I usually use Firefox. I don't know if it's
Okay.
the way that we're doing CSS or... Oh, maybe it's this one. Maybe I'm just messing with the wrong... Yeah, there it is. Okay.
Oh, there it is.
So
Oh.
I guess it's because this was color text.
Oh.
This must be some other thing. I don't totally know how our CSS is working. But on this one, so because the browser knows like, okay, this color is for text on top of something, here now you can see, as you slide this around, you can see when it does and doesn't pass.
That's cool.
The accessibility contrast ratios. So that's one thing to do. Let me refresh this to get rid of that. So let's see, what else would I do? So the next thing I would do was just do like a keyboard test to make sure that I can get to everything. So if I just hit tab, I would expect the first place that my focus goes to be in here. Awesome. And then if I keep tabbing, so this is good. It's just moving down the page. Another thing that sometimes people will try to do is remove the outline. When something is highlighted, some people are like, oh, this doesn't look good. And so we want to just set outline to none or something like that. But if you do that, then when people are navigating the page this way, they won't be able to tell where their focus is. So sometimes on other sites, you'll be like hitting tab and then you don't see any outlines anywhere. So you're like, okay, where am I? But luckily that is not a problem for us. Go team. And then another thing with hitting tab is just like the fact that, you know, it goes down in order is great. I made a little demo to show an example of like a bad version of this, where sometimes you can use CSS, something like CSS grid to move elements around. But then you can end up in a situation like this, where as I'm tabbing through the page, like I get down here and then suddenly now my focus has jumped up here, which is weird. And then, you know, the user's like not totally sure where their focus is going to be. Let's see. What else is on our checklist? Okay, so we did tabbing, we did color contrast. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is use... Well, actually, okay, so let's finish with the keyboard testing. So I can see here my focus is on this add item button. So I'm going to hit return to go to this page. And then if I hit tab, okay, so this is one thing that maybe we could make an improvement on, of like, if I'm down here and my page has changed now, ideally I want to get back up here to actually be able to enter an item. But if I'm using a keyboard, I have to like go backwards to get all the way to the beginning of that form. So something that we could do is like, when you click on this add item, we could move your focus automatically up here, something like that. And then if I type stuff in here, pickles, and then, so here I can either use the tab key, the tab key to get into here, and then now I can move with the arrow keys to set a different value, and then hit enter to add the item. Okay, sweet.
Is enter and space both equally accessible, or those?
I think that, okay, yeah. So I think that sometimes it depends on the HTML element. Like for, what am I trying to say? For forms, I think enter sometimes will try to submit the form. So it depends on what you're doing.
Is the user usually just going to hit enter for all activation?
I don't know. So this is this is an example of when it would be good to have like an actual keyboard user. I know that I usually try the spacebar first when I'm just doing things,
Yeah.
just to avoid submitting the form when it's like half completed. But yeah, then let's see. So let's go back to the list. Whee! So this is another example where it's like, okay, I gotta tab through all these things. Oh, okay. And I guess because it's up here. So now the last thing that I was going to demo is just using a screen reader. So on Macs, you have VoiceOver built in. And so for me, the way that I start that up is pressing Command F5.
Voice.
Ooh, okay. And then mine gets unhappy because I have so many tabs open at once. Come on, you can do it.
Heading level 4. Header navigation.
Okay,
Main.
can you hear this?
Filter items. Edit text.
Okay, sweet.
List 22 items.
Gosh.
Tomato paste. And one more item. Group. TCL.
Okay, so if I press Control, it makes it stop talking. Can you see this box down here that says what it's reading out? Okay, cool. So this is basically what a screen reader user would do, is like they would start this up and then they can...
Tomato paste. Unchecked. Checkbox. Tomato paste. Cheese. And...
Okay, so if you use... So I'm pressing down the Control and Option keys right now, and then if I use my arrows...
Apples. Apples. Clickable. Apples. Unchecked. Checkbox 4 of 22. You are currently on a checkbox.
So then you can see... Normally this box moves to what is currently focused.
Apples. Click. Juice. Unchecked. Juice. Clickable.
I don't know if that's because I have so many tabs open and it's just mad at me. But yeah, so you can hear...
Juice. Unchecked. Checkbox.
So hear how it tells you that, oh, this is a checkbox. So then if I push, let's see, let's try space.
Check. Juice. Checkbox.
Okay. So it tells me that I've checked it.
Juice. Click. Toothpaste.
I don't know why.
Unchecked.
Okay.
Checkbox 6 of...
Yeah, I don't know why it like doesn't update right away, but...
Toothpaste. Clickable. Soap. Unchecked. Checkbox 7.
But that's an example of like how you could navigate.
Cheese. List 22 items. Filter items. Edit text. Filter items. Page. / list. Clickable. You are current.
So...
Hello from the... Clickable. You are currently on a text element.
So I don't... Oh, that must be this. So we're up here. You can't see when I'm pointing with my fingers. So we're up here. Hello from the...
/ list. Clickable.
/
Page.
list.
Clickable.
Page.
You filter items. Clickable. Filter items. Edit text. You are currently on a text field. To enter text in this field, type P-I-C-K-L-E-S. Pickles. X button. You are currently on a button.
So that's an example of something that we could fix with like an ARIA label, because this button just says X, which to a screen reader user who can't see where they are on the page doesn't necessarily tell me what this button is going to do if I click it. So
menu 13 items back.
Actually,
you are currently on X button.
Okay, I'm gonna turn her
Voiceover off.
She stopped yelling at me. So on this button, if I wanted to add like an ARIA label and it say something like, let's see, what does this do? Clear filters. So now if I turn this back on.
Voiceover on Firefox, Smart. Developer tools, web content, smart shopping list, banner. Heading level 1, end of banner, main. Hello from the, click / list, page, filter items, click, pickles, insertion on word, pickles, clear filters button.
Okay, see, so now it tells me what that button is actually going to do. Yeah, normally this moves around, this little box moves around the page in a way that makes more sense so that it's easier to follow.
Voiceover off.
But yeah, that's a basic sort of test of how you can do accessibility testing. Any questions on any of that stuff that we've talked about so far? Sweet. So yeah, that's all that I've got. There's some more resources linked in here. Oh, actually, I forgot. So here to use the Axe Dev Tools. So there's a browser extension that you can add. And then, okay. So then if you click this button to scan your page, it will tell you what these issues are. So OL or unordered list and ordered list must only directly contain li script or template elements. So I can click this button to highlight the part of the field that is having that issue. Okay, so it looks like this is because our label and input are not inside of this li here. So it wants the only children of a ul to be an li element. And so then here it'll give you, does it tell you how to fix it? Let's see. There's also, if you want more info, you can click on this link and it'll take you to the DQ University site and explain more about the problem and why it matters, how to fix it. So yeah, that's how that works. Okay, now I'm done. But yeah, accessibility is like a whole field that some people spend their whole careers like learning a ton about. So if this is something that you're interested in, there's definitely a lot of information to learn.
Thank you for sharing. This is I think it has made it more accessible to me. Because like, it's like when people say, oh, your site needs to be accessible, I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, what do I need to focus on? And I think this is kind of helping to see, okay, well, if I can focus on these things, I'll be probably like half of the way there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's some, I don't remember the name of it, but there's an organization that does a test like every year, every couple of years of just like, the top 1 million websites. What accessibility issues do they have? And the biggest ones end up being like not using semantic HTML, not having alt text, and like color contrast. So just tackling those ones, you're already going to be better than a lot of sites out there. So.
And it'll definitely depend on the company. Like if you're working more in public sector, you'll have to do it. It's like, it's super important. But then depending on the private sector, like if it's like super like startup, they won't even talk about it. It wouldn't even be like an issue.
Right. Which can be frustrating as somebody, I really like accessibility. And so it can definitely be frustrating to be trying to get your team to prioritize it. But one thing that I've tried to do is just sort of, kind of like Rogue One, like do it from the inside, like as you're reviewing stuff, as you're reviewing code reviews for anything, just like, try it with a keyboard and see what happens and just point those things up. To be a little bit more of a grassroots effort until you can get the whole company on board.
True. Yeah, I've always had a pet peeve about like videos being the rise of like how everyone disseminates information. It's like through videos. It's like, but for me, that's always a problem because like that the web is always like for the world, and not everyone has access to video. Like that's
true.
That's a ton of bandwidth. Like it should be a web page, a simple web page. Like that's where the information should be. That's like. Yeah, that's my small pet peeve, but people make a lot of money off YouTube, so.
Right. Well, but that's something that they talk about in the WCAG guidelines too, of like, if you have a video, you also need to have a transcript or something so that if you can't load the video, you still have access to the information. So yeah, it ends up being more work sometimes to make something accessible, but I think that it's worth it. So.
Totally. Should we go into issues?
Let's do it.
Okay, issues. Okay, the first time I've done the issues, how do I do this? Cool. Okay, are the issues 11 and 12? Is that right?
I think so. Should just be the next two.
Cool. So I'll just read it out, and you guys will decide if you want to do it. All right. As a user, I want to view a list of my shopping list items in order in order of how soon I'm likely to need to buy each of them again so that it's clear what I need to buy soon. I have a problem with that sentence, but we'll just keep going. Sorting items by how soon the user might need to buy them will make it easier for the user to identify what they need to buy, which will in turn help them better plan their shopping trips. To that end, we will be sorting items into 4 possible groups according to how urgently the user should buy the item. Need to buy soon, 7 days or fewer, for the next purchase. Need to buy kind of soon, between 7 and 30 days. Need to buy not soon, 30 days or more. And inactive, 60 days have passed since the last purchase. To implement this feature, your team will need to create some new UI elements so the user knows how their items are sorted and write some logic behind the scenes. Sorry. Understand the task at hand. Sorry. I just realized I should make this bigger. Perform the sorting itself. Read the acceptance criteria and our notes carefully to be sure you understand the task at hand. And don't be afraid to reach out to the rest of the team and your mentors if you need help. You've got this. Okay, acceptance criteria. Items in the list are shown with an indicator that tells the user they should buy the item soon, kind of soon, or not so soon, or the item is inactive. This urgency indicator does not rely on color. API Firestone.js exports new compare purchase urgency function with the following behaviors. Sorts inactive items last, then sorts items in ascending order of days until purchased, and sorts items with the same days until purchased alphabetically. I'll have to parse that in my head for a while. Sure. Okay. A stretch goal. If you complete all the previous acceptance criteria, consider what happens when an item's date next purchase has passed but isn't yet active. Let's call them item overdue. So you could extend the functionality of compare purchase urgency to sort overdue items to the top of the list. Indicate in your UI when an item is overdue. Okay, I'm not going to read the notes. It's too long. Okay, so that's that. I really want to edit this sentence, but okay. And I'm going to say, like, as you get up senior and then past senior, being able to write clearly and read clearly is so much more important than anything else. Like, I'm not necessarily a great speaker, but I can parse language well and try and break it down to something really, really clear. Yeah, this thing's going to kill me. I'm going to just stay awake, stay awake at night thinking about the sentence. Okay.
The edit button's right there. You can just do
can
that.
I? Should I? Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
No, I have to. I can't do this under pressure.
That's all right. It'll still be there later.
Yeah. I wonder if Fully Baked looked at this and like thought about it, and then when they rewrote the sentence is still the same, because I wonder if it'll just be the exact same thing I'm thinking of. Like, I can't clarify this, but okay. Next one. Okay. Item 11. Okay. In addition to not being super great at speaking, or that's not my huge forte, I just had an eye exam, so I just had drops in my eyes.
Oh no.
So the screen isn't super great.
Reading on hard mode.
Yeah, I really am. As a user, I want to be able to delete items from my shopping list so that my list isn't cluttered with items I don't want to buy in the future. Users might make a mistake when entering an item, or may decide they won't be buying a certain item again in the future. Allowing them to delete list items will help them keep their list tidy. Acceptance criteria. The list item component renders a button that allows the user to delete an item from their list when checked. Clicking the delete button prompts the user to confirm that they really want to delete the item. The delete item function in API Firebase.js has been filled out and deletes the item from the Firestore database. As noted in the wireframe, activating the delete button should show a confirmation dialog. We want to be able to give users a chance to confirm destructive choices. Makes sense? Or it might be tempting to create your own modal dialog component to handle confirmation, but modals are fraught with accessibility concerns, so please consider using a simple JavaScript confirm dialog. So modal dialog is a dialog that shows up and stops you from doing anything else on the page. That's what modal means. Cool. Yeah, so you can, like, yeah, that's what they're talking about. You can like make it by hand, like making a div and doing all sorts of cool stuff, or you can just like use the JavaScript function that just pops up the system alert. Yeah. Yeah, it is more accessible to use the JavaScript confirm dialog. But like a lot of companies will have an issue with it because it doesn't look nice. It's just a system one, right? I'm not sure if you can install the system one, but anyways, that's just more detail than you need. Who are the teams? Do I go?
I think Nina and Nisha are together.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, you get dibs on whatever you want, whichever ticket.
I know Nisha loves time, so I'm pretty sure she wants 12. Like that's her favorite thing. Clearly I think 11 is a little bit simpler than 12. I think.
But also both, it seems like both of them are going to involve working with the database.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I think I like 12 better if
12?
Nisha is okay with it. But if you prefer 11, I can do 11 too.
Nisha?
Uh, okay, we'll do 12.
You 12? Oh, so brave. Can I send from here?
I think so.
I've never
Yeah.
done this. Is it just
Nisha, yeah.
Yeah, I think Jeff's the only one that has a
it's off?
username that's not his name.
Did okay, cool. All good.
Woo! Do you want to
Are
assign
we
the other
done?
one to Jenna and
Oh
Jeff just
yeah, absolutely.
so they get an email?
And what is his name again?
It's Kurt.
Bird.
Yeah, KU. Yeah, that one.
Kurzberg.
That one. Kurzberg.
Cool.
Huzzah!
Awesome.
Well done.
Yeah. Is there anything else we can talk about? Or is that it? Well done. Yeah? Any questions? Questions, concerns? No? Okay. Awesome. I'll see you guys probably in the week, probably, and then Saturday.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Have a good week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.